I'm so proud of you, Harry. I can't believe you're on the right link.
Hello.
Test, test. Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Cool. So Dr. J said that earlier this morning, she said she was kind of stuck at JFK because of all those American Airlines cancellations. But she said, she should be able to make the time, and she'd let me know if she couldn't, and she hasn't said anything. So I think we're go.
Okay. Sounds good. So you can tell Biscuit is her usual high energy self. So I was just looking over the weekly Nielsen Tuesday morning report.
Mm-hmm.
They do the 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Nothing surprising. But if for convenience and grocery together for the 4 weeks ending October 23rd, it's amazing to me how much Constellation is driving all of the growth in the beer industry. Basically Constellation and Boston Beer.
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers in the latest 4 weeks, Molson Coors and AB have both lost around a share point each. And Constellation and Boston Beer have each gained about a share point apiece.
And can you imagine what it would look like for Constellation if they actually had enough supply?
Exactly. I mean, that's just a 1-for-1, and then everybody else is down or flat.
Yeah.
It's mostly down. And hold on, let me let Jordan in. I'm guessing that's what that ding 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 was. Okay. So hey Jordan, we're just talking about the Nielsen scan data, and we're just talking about how this Constellation Boston basically are taking share from Molson Coors and AB on almost a 1-to-1 basis in the latest 4 weeks. Pabst down double digits, Heineken down mid singles, Diageo up a little, Mark Anthony down 8%, FIFCO down 5%, blah, 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 blah. Then you get down to the brand level. Of course, Bud Light, Coors Light, Miller Lite, all down, between 7 and 10%. This is volume. Sub premium, all down double digits, except for Busch, it's down 5%. Craft down double digits again, except for New Belgium, up 4%, and Sam Adams up 9.3%. Ciders mostly all down, except for Two Towns Cider House. Twisted Tea up 25%.
Largest FMB now.
Yeah. So basically Mexican import and FMBs, and everything else is taking a bath.
It's like I say, Harry, you see, everything that's growing is growing.
Is that what's happening there, Jenn? I don't know. I maybe should run it by our data analysts. What do you think?
There's still brands that aren't growing percent change that are growing dollar share.
Gaining share, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if your dollars are down less than 10%, or then you're growing share, or maybe not 10%, probably 4%, 5%. Right. Because volume's down 8%, dollars down 4%. Pretty much all year, it's dollars are down about half of what volumes are down, thanks to trading up and price increases. And I have, the prices are just now starting to really inch up between 50 cents and $1 a case, and it's showing up in scan data. In other words, some of that might be reduced discounting. Some of it might just be price increases. I suspect at this point, a lot of it is reduced discounting. I did read in the journal that, or somewhere, Bloomberg, that a lot of grocery chains are telling suppliers, hey, maybe let's not do these promos since you can't fill the shelves.
Yeah.
Maybe don't promote against empty shelves.
I don't know.
That's an old line from this guy named, I can't remember his first name, but it was Bowlin. He used to be the CEO of Miller Brewing Company for a short time. Old timers will remember this. Bowlin, right before Norm Anatomy. And I remember him screaming and yelling from the stage. You could see how well Miller was doing at this point. Okay. This was pre-2005. And they were just losing share hand over fist. And he was like, I will not promote against empty shelves. I won't do it. we spent $50 million on Miller Clear and I can't find it anywhere on the shelf. And nobody told him is that the product sucked. And the reason it wasn't on the shelves is because nobody would buy it.
Kind of like what would have happened if Two Hats came to market.
Well, anyway, that was promoting against empty shelves is a bad idea. But the problem is, here's the deal, is that especially at these big brewers, these marketers are trained from the time they hit Columbia that we must market. We are marketers, and the sales guys are the same way. We are sales guys. We put packages together, promos and promotions and activations. That's what we do. So we do it, right? Preacher's going to preach, haters going to hate, marketer's going to market, and salespeople are going to sell. And so they're still out there doing those things that they've always done, but everybody's kind of going,
right.
We don't have anything to sell. Stop.
We should have Greg Owsley on, because to your point, Harry, marketers continue to market, but marketing works so differently now. Like you can't just, well, I'm sure there would be a lot who beg to differ with me, but the days of like the blockbuster ad selling a ton of beer, I don't think it works quite that way anymore, right? Like
No.
You can't just push market anything. It has to be a little more organic than that. So maybe we get somebody like Greg on to talk about that dynamic.
Greg, I don't know why we haven't had Greg on. He would be a great
we've
guest.
Been busy. That's why.
If he's the one that's busy, then he needs to make time.
We've been busy.
We're not busy.
Oh, okay.
No,
Does
not
Biscuit
busy
look
at all.
busy? Does Biscuit look busy to you? We have capacity right here. This is a full-time employee who's just laying here.
Capacity.
We have capacity. Now, that's a good point. But they haven't been marketing. They have slowed. I mean, I was looking at Coke. They normally spend $4 billion in marketing a year, and last year they only spent about $2 billion. That goes straight to the bottom line, and the breweries are no different. I'm sure their marketing dollars are way down, and they're creeping back up as sports come back. But oh my gosh, there's somebody knocking at the door. Let's let our special guest in. Is this Dr. J. Jackson-Beckham?
Hi, this is. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Hello, Dr. J. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
I thought you'd be at an airport or something, I was told.
Yeah, I literally just got home about 20 minutes ago. So.
Well, thank you for making time with us. My name's Harry Shoemaker. This is BeerNet Radio. Congratulations, you've made it to the top.
Nice to meet you, sort of face-to-face, Harry.
Yeah. I'm joined here by editors Jenn Litz-Kirk and Jordan Driggers. And we're delighted. Of course, this is Dr. J. Jackson-Beckham, PhD. And Dr. J, this is the first time we met, right?
Yeah, if you don't count Twitter. So.
Okay. And so that's my first question. Why am I blocked on your Twitter? What stupid shit did I say?
You're actually not blocked. I deleted my Twitter.
Oh.
Yeah. I deleted
this is
my
such
Twitter.
Good news.
Yeah, I deleted my Twitter at the beginning of the year.
So I've been just having anxiety for weeks because of nothing.
No,
because I have been blocked by many, many solid people on Twitter for, and it's usually things I just say that I'm not even, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But thank you.
No blocking. I'm officially off.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you. Dr. J is an expert in inclusion, and now you have started your own consultancy. You also do work with the Brewers Association on inclusion, and kind of something that the industry needs. And so, talk to us first of all about how you got interested in beer in the first place, and what drove you over here.
Gosh, so. Maybe I'll ask you to refine a little bit. Like, what got me interested as a consumer, just as a fan, or what got me interested in like maybe doing some work in the industry?
Not consumer, but more as so. What was your PhD thesis on?
So it was about beer. So I guess right around the time when I was starting my PhD doctoral work, I was kind of all the way in as a consumer, and was actually managing a homebrew shop. It was kind of like what I did for gas money, during grad school. And had been planning some events, helped plan this event called Homebrew for Hunger. It was kind of a like homebrew festival slash beer fest that we donated money to the food bank. And I was investing a lot of like hobby time, I guess, into my beer habit. And I was also in grad school kind of about to devote this weird amount of time to writing a doctoral dissertation. And it just kind of struck me that I was like, I don't want to do like two entirely separate things anymore. So I'm going to do the academic work about the brewing industry. So this was right around 2008. So it's the kind of height of the financial crisis. And what I realized is that the brewing industry was like not acting right, if that makes sense. Like, if you look at what was happening in the American economy writ large, craft beer was kind of doing the opposite thing. We were rapidly adding firms back then. So that's like, double-digit growth at that time. And volumes were going up. People are drinking more beer and they're paying more for it. Now we do, historically see a bit of a spike in alcohol consumption during, bad times, but this was kind of sustained. And for me, the question was like, if the industry is not following these like strict economic rules of supply and demand, like what is going on, right? And so that was kind of the central question. And the hypothesis for me was that culture is happening, and that in the craft beer space, like culture is essentially important and carries a lot of value. So whether it's like the ethos of being like non-corporate, or whether it's some sort of kind of cultural capital you earn from sustainability, or from local, or from independent, or whatever, right? Any of those things. So that was the main premise. But if you stick your toe in questions of culture about the industries, but in particularly the craft segment, you inevitably come up against identity and people. And of course, being who I was, and kind of having been hanging around the scene for, at that time, almost a decade, and not seeing a good deal of people who look like me,
what? I'm shocked.
I know, shock.
So I mean, it seems like at that time, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that a lot of craft drinkers were also like, they liked Mumford and Sons, and like steampunk, and that was, is it steampunk? Is that the right word, Jordan?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, old tricycles and shit. And it just seems like the Black people I know were just too cool for that. And
well, I think when I talked to people, like I was just like, yeah, I'm going to this, craft beer festival, or I'm going to whatever. I remember probably around 2009, I flew up to Boston for Extreme Beer Fest, and was like, all of my friends were like, you're doing what? And I was like, and they're like, you might as well go sailing.
In Boston of all places.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just like, but I
got out of your comfort zone. It's kind of brave, and
I always tell people I'm kind of like everybody else. Like I got hooked like really hard, right? Like when I got hooked, I got hooked. And either through bravery or stupidity, right? Like I just kind of was like, well, I'm just gonna be here and deal with whatever comes with that, right?
Hey, Dr. J, it's Jen. I'm curious, what was the brewery that got you hooked before you started working at the homebrew shop?
Oh my gosh. So I don't know that it's a single brewery, right? I've told this story before, but I've worked in like a like rowdy college beer bar when I was an undergrad. This was like in the late 90s in the like mountains of Southwest Virginia. And, we got a shifty when we closed up at the end of the night. And like, rules of the shifty, like whatever, you can have whatever's on draft, right? And like always it'd be like, Jay, what do you want? And my answer was always like, I want the most expensive thing we have on draft.
Smart.
And that was like, that's all, so I tasted around, but I think at that time we were drinking like a ton of like UFO and like Abita Turbo Dog and like
Oh, geez.
Saranac Lactam, what
Magic
else was
hat.
Magic hat, yeah, the number 9. Yeah,
Number
you know
9.
exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, it was that era.
Yeah, space dust. So you got into craft as a consumer. You got into it intellectually as well. So when did you get into it more professionally?
Yeah, so I was so I was teaching as a college professor for a while. And my as an academic, you kind of present your research. It's like part of the job. And what I was realizing is that like I was presenting all this stuff about beer and kind of like academic conferences where everybody just looked at me like I was an alien. But like found a little bit of like crossover with like some early beer media podcasts. I remember like 2012, Colin and Sire, the guys over at Hen House, had me on like a podcast that they had for a little while. And I did my doctoral work at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and I was like kind of a constant fixture around. I lived in Durham, and I was like, All About Beer was right there.
Daniel Bradford, an
yeah,
old colleague. That's
Dane
a
was
beer
still
town,
there.
really, right? I mean,
Totally.
yeah.
So I think just from like connections I had been making, and I was doing a lot of field research. I mean, there's a chapter in my dissertation about Full Steam in Durham, so I knew Sean and knew a bunch of those guys. The World Beer Fest, hooked up with Hammer and those guys to just work the crew. So I just kind of was leaking into that scene. And I think the big turning point was I was invited to give a plenary talk at the North Carolina Craft Brewers Conference. One year, I think maybe 2016 or so. And Julia Herz was there. And I think the BA had kind of just started working on the diversity committee. I guess this would have been 2007 then, or 17, sorry. And I think that, it just kind of connected then very quickly after that. The BA was like, hey, we're looking for a diversity ambassador. And as a faculty person, as a professor, faculty consulting is something a lot of us do. I'm in communication and cultural studies, and a lot of my colleagues advise like political campaigns, so personally, I think it's way cooler to advise a brewing trade association than a political campaign.
You think?
Yeah.
And wasn't that around the time Triumph the Insult Dog went to the Great American Beer Festival and just kind of ripped on how white it was? Wasn't that about 2017? I mean, it's one of the funniest clips in the world.
So. I think so.
He like to the point where he's like, this beer tastes like dog shit and racism. It was really it took a national TV show to kind of wake everybody up.
Yeah. And I think like there's a thing where like when the getting's good, you don't really have to be like terribly self-aware, and I think that, at that point, and maybe still to some degree, like the financial imperative like wasn't there.
Its change seems slow. What progress has the industry made, and what still needs to be done? That's a pretty broad question.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, you're right. Change is slow, and I think it's necessarily true because what we're talking about is culture change. And if culture change happens super fast, it's probably not going to stick, right? So I'm okay with slow as long as we're making like steady progress. And I think right now what we're doing is like building infrastructure. I think that's, it's the approach I take. It's what the work I'm, working on with the Brewers Association in a lot of ways. So, a lot of people are like, what's some of the most important things that we did? I think, interestingly, one of the most important things we do at the Brewers Association is create data, right? Like we, prior to that first kind of comprehensive data collection effort we did in 2018, it was always just a like crapshoot as far as understanding like who was in the industry or anecdotal information, right? Like now we have numbers, we're doing benchmarking. I think that's really important because in some ways, like it's a sign that we're taking it seriously, right? Like we're not content to work with like anecdotal data. The Diversity Inclusion Events Grant Program at the BA has been a really great way to kind of use the resources of the Brewers Association to kind of empower those people who are on the ground in other places. And that's been awesome to see that all of the different types of events that we've been able to fund over the couple of years that program's been working, from, Fresh Fest to Suave Fest to Dames and Drags to Beer Culture Summit, Beers Without Beards, Female Beer Festival, right? Like tons of different events across the country that are bringing new people on the consumer side. And then this year we launched a mentorship program, which has just been like so awesome. It's been so fun to do that work, matching folks in different places in the industry with existing people. I mean, last night when I was still stuck in Cleveland, I was on a hotel Zoom with like six of our participants in the mentorship program, and like Jason Perkins is talking to us about recipe formulation at Allagash, right? And that's an awesome opportunity. I mean, it's awesome because I get to take advantage of it. But that's so helpful and interesting for folks who are either aspiring to get into the industry or already in, but looking to advance, to have that kind of structured mentoring, because so many people I've talked to over the years have talked about how important informal mentoring relationships have been, and it's literally people on the phone like, oh, don't do that because TTB is going to come get you, or, oh, that's a crappy waste of money, don't do that. All those things can make or break folks. And, being able to build out those networks for more people is important and exciting. But I think it's quiet work, right? Like that's infrastructure building. And I always kind of compare it to a house. What I want to do is work on the plumbing and the electrical system, right? And I think people notice the interior design, they notice the furniture and the curtains, but like if the toilet doesn't work, like no one's going to hang out there, right?
It's the unsexy stuff behind the scenes. Yeah.
So you're putting all of the work in right now, right? Is what I'm hearing you say. You're building the infrastructure for the industry to be more inclusive. But I mean, are you seeing any signs, any needles move that the industry is actually, ready for this moment and making progress? Because, most of our listeners will know, and obviously, Dr. J, about the expose, if you will, earlier this year from Brienne Allen, where, so many accounts of sexual harassment and other disinclusion were laid bare. And I'm glad that she's shined a light on it. But I also have to ask, okay, is this going to happen again in a year or two? Because the people who said, oh my God, not in craft beer, they just must not have been paying attention at all, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I mean, this is going to sound weird, but like that in itself is progress, right? Like that It got laid bare, that it was a story, and that so many people responded in the way they did, because I think, like, just like you're right, like it's not like it's new, it's been happening all along, except the response in the past has been hard shrug, right? Mm-hmm. And so the fact that like we're not hard shrugging anymore is a sign of progress. And I mean, I think it's difficult for me sometimes because I'm like, man, I remember going to festivals and stuff in like 2001, and like, gosh, I can't express how different it looks now, right? Like that's it is great. Yeah, radically different. So I think it's really hard because I think a lot of people who are coming into craft beer 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago are like, what the hell? And they're not seeing a lot of progress. And I kind of want to be like, oh my gosh, let's walk back to 2000. Yeah. And we'll take a look, and you can see just how far we've come. That's not to say we don't have farther to go, but I think it helps to have a longer eye and to like have a broader perspective, because you realize that like you take a snapshot, it's going to look like stasis, right? Like, so you have to kind of connect the threads, and we're going to get there, but like even that it's a conversation that anyone is entertaining at this juncture is a really positive sign.
Yeah, no, that's great. I also have to ask, I mean, do you feel like you have to work twice as hard to include people of color in the industry as you do to include women? And not that those things should be mutually exclusive, but for example, and I don't think they mean any harm by it, but you'll look at some like women's beer groups and there's nary a person of color to be seen, right? So like, how do you combat that?
Yeah, I don't know that you combat it, but I think you have to, again, like there's an issue of broader awareness that's kind of going on there. And I think one of the things that I say out loud that I think a lot of people get a little taken aback is that like, can you still hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. My headphones just crapped out. So I'll see if I can go. one of the things I tend to say is like craft beer is not special, right? Like it is a microcosm, right, of the broader political, economic, social, political landscape of the US. So, we're just a, beer-shaped mirror for things that are going on more broadly. And
this is sacrilege. The craft beer industry isn't somehow precious and special and different.
Right. We are not special. And we might be a little precious though. But I think that that question, Jen, I think it depends on where you are, but like everything that I think systemically kind of affects people of color comes into play there. I live in Richmond, Virginia. There are neighborhoods here where you might have like 2 amazing bottle shops, and 2 blocks away, you might have a neighborhood that like never sees a craft brand anywhere, right? Like not in the C-stores, not anywhere else. And like, you're not even gonna, it's not about like being priced out or anything, right? People spend money on what they want to spend money on. It's really about exposure, right? Opportunity. And I'm kind of like, so I think there are just simply more barriers and more different types of barriers. I think that certain populations are running into. And so, I do think we have to work a little bit harder just because we have to like be a little bit more proactive about seeing what those barriers could be, and thinking about removing them.
Yeah. Hey, Dr. J. I was wondering.
Dr. J, this is our Dr. J.
Yeah, this is Jay.
We call him Dr. J internally, and
this is the first time they've ever called me.
But I was going to say, if the real Dr. J needs headphones, our Dr. J has several spares. He can ship you
all the headphones. You do have
all the headphones in the world. Half of our yearly equipment budget goes to Jordan's headphones. Even the dog doesn't have headphones now. But okay, go ahead, Jordan. Sorry. I just had to give you a little shit.
Always. No, I was going to ask, in working with breweries, have you found that more breweries come to you looking to prevent issues, or, after an issue has already happened?
Yeah, I would say yeah. I think
it's got to be both.
Yeah, it's definitely both. But I think sometimes I start working with people and like, I only find out like later that they had an incident, if that makes sense.
Or maybe they didn't know they had issues until you come in. You're like,
yeah, it's a little bit of both. You probably, unsurprisingly, lots more recently than previous.
Yeah, and and then in working with breweries, is there any like particular like course of action that you see that is overlooked or lacking by most, and like something that often makes them say like, wow, I didn't realize that, but that makes perfect sense, something that almost everyone can work on?
Yeah. So okay, so two answers to that, and it depends on whether you're acting proactively or reactively, right?
Okay.
Let's say something does happen, you effed it up and you're reacting, right? I always tell people like 4 A's, right? Acknowledgement, apology, action, atonement. And what a lot of people do is try to skip those first 2 and go straight to 3 and 4. And I'm always like, I think that the hurdle is people are like, I don't want to accept fault. And that's what apology means to me. But I think you can express sympathy that someone has experienced harm. I think that's really important because like harm hurts whether you intended it or not, right? And I think I tell a lot of people you need to get out of your own way in terms of like being precious about your intentions. The analogy I love to make is like, if you're going to say that diversity, equity, and inclusion is an important part of how you do business, right? Then compare it to something else like your quality program or your safety program or your sustainability program, right? And let's say you get a negative outcome in one of those other areas, right? Like you brew a butter bomb, or you have a slip and fall or burn in the brew house, or right, something along those lines. Like nobody's going to give a rat's ass about your intentions, right? Like if your beer is full of diacetyl, you're going to be like, well, I didn't mean for this to happen. Like the outcome is what's important, right? Fixing the outcome. Do you dump it? Blah, 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 right? And I think that's the outcome I want people to kind of think about taking, is like,
your intentions are lovely, but they kind of don't matter. Like you need to think about like what the outcomes are. You know?
I think that's a really good point. And because that's it in my own journey, I went through that but my intentions, but what about my intentions? Well, nobody gives a shit about my intentions. And it's the end result. And I think that is a really, that self-awareness is something that like you said, this is going to take time. If you want it to be sticky and to last, it's got to actually, people have to actually come to that conclusion themselves rather than just going through the motions. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah,
Dr. J?
100%. You know,
Yeah.
the second half of that, Jay, is I think professionalizing the effort, you know, and again, we went through this with quality as an industry, right? Like hey, you probably should throw a lab up in there, you know, or you should, you know, start thinking about things like DO and, you know, a cold supply chain and whatever, right? Like you have to be professional about it. And I think the same goes for this type of work. I could think there's a little bit of a presumption that like, you're like, okay, we just need to be like nicer, you know? And I'm like, actually, it's not about being nicer, right? Like you can think about, right, like formalizing this process. So writing it into like all of your professional documentation, doing diagnosis and assessment work, right? What gets measured, what gets managed. You know, writing things into SOPs, right? Like you have SOPs for your safety, you have SOPs for your hot side production, you need SOPs for your hiring processes, for your external comms, right? For your human resources, for everything that touches this. So, you know, realizing it's not like being a good gal or a good guy that's gonna move the needle with this, but like, you know, adopting it as a matter of professional practice.
As a follow-up to that, you know, I wonder, we say, you know, beer's not special, craft beer's not special. And I get that totally. But I think it is a little special working in the alcohol industry, right? What happens when someone's excuse is, well, I drank too much, right? Like, how do you codify that not happening? Does that mean there's like maybe some people who just shouldn't work in the industry if that's going to be an issue for them? Or like, how do we deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to professionalization. Like, I think for me, you know, I work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, but more and more often I kind of connect that to both HR and to physical and mental wellness efforts, because I think it's hard to do any of those three things well without kind of thinking about them holistically. And like, you know, I think this past spring, you know, this reckoning, it didn't just show us that there's residual issues in terms of discrimination and bias and harassment, you know, based on gender identity, race identity, et cetera, but also that like there is a kind of crisis of wellness, you know, in the industry. And I say wellness very intentionally because I think what people immediately go to is like alcoholism, right? Like very problematic drinking. And I'm not saying that's not an issue, but I think overconsumption, right, especially in certain types of settings, doesn't have to be, right, you know, pathological, doesn't have to be addictive drinking to be a dangerous influence in the industry. And so yeah, I think, I'm sure like there's a lot of industry-wide precautions that like people who work in textiles or mining or other, right, high risk, high threat environments have to kind of combat harm to people, harm to environment. And I think that's kind of where we need to be, right?
This industry does attract alcoholics or creates alcoholics. So, you know, one of the problems is in a lot of positions, you got to be there and work the off premise in the mornings and then work the on premise in the evening. So you have to be a functioning alcoholic. And I mean, that's why the divorce rate, I think, is so high, regardless of where you stand in the industry. Yet another layer of problems to address. But that's not, that's for someone else. We got to focus. But you're right. Mental health is a big issue in our industry and another thing to tackle, right?
You know, I think for me, you know, I try to keep it simple when I can. And I think what I've been boiling down to lately is that, like, you know, as an industry, we like pivoted on quality, right? Like we were like, we have to get serious as an industry because like somebody's crappy beer is bad for all of us. We pivoted on sustainability, right? We're pivoting on safety. We're not doing quite as well as some of the bigger brewers are, but like we're getting there, right? Taking safety seriously. And I just think thriving human beings is like the next major cornerstone that like we need an industry-wide pivot on. And for all that encompasses part of the work I do, part of the work my colleagues in the craft beer HR group do, people who are doing picking up the torch and running with physical and mental wellness. Like I think that's going to be our next kind of stepstone of like maturation as an industry, right? And I think it's not just about making sure people don't get hurt. I really do believe it's like making sure that this industry is around, right, for a while. I think it's about like a sustainable industry.
Yeah, it is. It's existential because like I said, all the Mumford and Sons, that crowd, we've already reached all of them. There's nobody else, and we can see it in the flattening of the curve on craft. We've reached all those weird white guys. We have to reach the rest of the country.
Yeah,
I mean, from a consumption standpoint, and the way to do that is to start within the industry to reflect the general public. I mean, distributors are better at that, honestly, because they hire based on their market, right? They want people in the market that's reflective of the communities that they're in. Whereas craft brewers, they're more internal. They hire people that look like them and that are friends and family. And I think that's kind of why it was so insular. Here I am trying to be an anthropologist. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I have an undergraduate degree in economics, Dr. J, so you can see how qualified I
am. No, but you raised such a good point, and something that Garrett Oliver recently said. He was talking about kind of standing on the wings, being Garrett, watching the kind of hard turn towards seltzer and other types of malt beverage, and saying that he's got a lot of like ambivalence about that turn. And it's not like just as like Garrett beer guy, but I think what he looks at is like we don't have to chase the novelty dragon to try to like sell the same people a new thing. Like we could just sell beer to all the people who are not drinking beer right now. And a way you can kind of read that as like we'd rather turn to the like crazy market of beyond beer products where, let's face it, right, like we have almost no share compared to like the White Claws and Trulies of the world, rather than just saying like, oh, there's a giant market segment right here in my neighborhood that we've traditionally not served, rather than just saying like, let's just sell our beer to like more people, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, the Latinx and African American communities alone are completely under indexed and untapped. And well, we've run past time, but one of the things I wanted to leave you with, Dr. J, is before we got on the call, I just wanted to like do a little research on you to make sure I was up to speed. And of course, you kicked me off of Twitter, so I couldn't go that route. So I looked on.
He never cares when I block him from Twitter, Dr. J. So
never will. I just get a new account, Jen. I'll get a new account. I will troll you, Jen, on Twitter. So don't front. But no, I found you on LinkedIn, and I read an article that actually touched me. And it was an article you wrote several years ago, which I find it fascinating that you're a pro football fan. You just don't seem like that. And that's the thing. You can't pigeonhole people. Yeah. Everybody has got so many interests, and you're a Washington fan, and you talked about your grandmother and how she didn't give a shit about politics or any of that, but don't use her. And why are we fighting about the name of a damn football team? It really moved me. It's a great article. If you haven't checked it out, folks, check it out on Dr. J's LinkedIn. And it's funny because you wrote that story before they even changed their name to nothing, right?
Yeah, well before.
So they chose to choose, and that's another thing where it's like, well, our intentions, but come on, Redskin, come on.
Yeah.
Good Lord, even Biscuits, you can tell is offended as shit. Look at her.
She's like, I'm over it.
She is totally over it. Well, thank you, Dr. J. I know you're very busy for being on. We're look for this probably early next week on beernetradio.com, where you'll find our podcast. And thank you for drinking beer, because listen, it pays for her dog food, and it pays for Jordan's many sets of earphones.
Awesome. You're welcome, Jordan.
All right.
Thank
Any
you.
parting
Thank you.
words for our listeners? Any parting words, Ope?
Yeah, no. Well, since you brought it up, I will say to the people who noticed that I'm off of Twitter and miss my like weekend all caps football rants, because that's usually what I did, like both on Saturday and Sunday.
I loved it.
Miss it. So sorry, but like please know that it still carries on in a non-Twitter format. So
well, your mental health is important, and if Twitter wasn't conducive to that, I have vastly reduced my social media presence, much to the delight of my associates, friends, and family. Me, I still want to get on it. My fingers itch all the time.
Yeah, it was an interesting transition, but after a while I was like, oh, okay.
I find myself fighting with Michael Kaiser, and I'm like, I like Michael Kaiser. Why are we fighting? We're both on the same page mostly. Just God. Anyway, well, thanks for being on, Dr. J. And
thanks, Dr. J.
We'll have you on again
so much.
in a few months or so if you're game.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, take care. Have a good week.
Cheers.
Take care, y'all.
Bye-bye.